Policy Statement 2014.
Mr Speaker.
Paul Goldsmith.
I move that the House take note of the report of the Finance and Expenditure Committee on the Budget Policy Statement 2014. Mr Speaker, the John Key-led government heads to the 20 September general election firmly focused on the issues that matter to our community, to all Kiwis. A stronger economy and more jobs, better frontline health and education services, a safer New Zealand and rebuilding Christchurch. And that, Mr Speaker, is what I want to talk about today, and that is what most New Zealanders are concerned about. Mr Speaker, the National-led government's program to build a faster-growing economy with more jobs and rising incomes is delivering positive results for all New Zealanders. Updated forecasts and the half-year update and budget policy statement issued in December show a relatively strong upturn, with expected economic growth reaching 3.6% in 2015 and unemployment rate falling. And while the recovery is gathering momentum, Mr Speaker, the global environment still remains uncertain. And we only have to look at the events in Ukraine and Russia over the past few weeks to show how fragile the world is. And markets largely have shrugged off those geopolitical scares so far, but we don't know how things will pan out in the next few months. And so we do need to take all care. In this environment, it's important to maintain clear and credible economic and fiscal settings, Mr Speaker, and this is the best way to create new jobs, raise incomes and help families to get ahead. And the latest forecasts show, Mr Speaker, they show the government posting a modest operating surplus before gains and losses of $86 million in 2014-15, similar to the $75 million surplus forecast in budget 2013. Surpluses are then forecast to increase over the next 2 years. Debt is forecast to fall, and net core Crown debt expected to peak at 26% of GDP in 2014-15 before falling to 16.9% in 2019-20. The 2019-20. The National-led government remains committed to responsible long-term fiscal management, Mr Speaker, and that is why I fully support all the figures that are outlined in this budget policy statement. I just wanted to think, though, by the way, Mr Speaker, we've seen some comments. I came across some comments in the Australian Financial Review yesterday in its review of the New Zealand situation, and there was a quote from the Australian Financial Review said, a new Labour government, speaking of New Zealand, if it kept its promises, New Zealand Power, New Zealand Assure, Kiwi Build, would likely be the most interventionist Labour government since well before the Roger Douglas-led pro-market reforms of the 1980s, i.e. That if they followed the policies that they've announced so far, they'd be heading back to Bill Rawlings' days or worse than that. Funnily enough, I was doing some digging around. The Labour Party, when they were formed in 1916, promised were all about nationalising the means of production, distribution and exchange. And, well, they got around to dropping that in 1954. But I took the time to have a look at the Labour policy platform that was signed off in the November 2013 conference last year, and David Parker's introduction to that policy platform said that it's binding, this platform is binding on the party, including all the caucus, and will guide the creation of the manifesto for next year. So what does that include? And on the question of equality, it says, our vision of a just society is founded on equality and fairness. Labour believes social justice means that all people should have equal access to social, economic, cultural, political and legal spheres, regardless of wealth, gender, ethnicity or social position. Well, I think most people could basically agree with that. They said Labour has no matter the circumstances of our birth, we are each accorded equal opportunity to achieve our full potential in life. Again, I think most people would agree with that, but that's not where they end. Because they continue. They say, this is the Labour Party's policy platform, we believe in more than just equal opportunities, we believe in equality of outcomes. Equality of outcomes, Mr Speaker. They haven't learnt the most basic lesson of history, that the equality of outcomes can only be achieved through extreme force and by massively increasing the power of bureaucrats and the state, and the outcome generally universally in those situations has been disastrous. Some people work hard, some don't. Some are lucky, some aren't. Some are talented in music and sport and science. Others have talents elsewhere. Some make wise choices in their personal lives, some don't. Some people smoke, some don't. Some have 5 kids with 5 different partners, some don't. They all lead to very different outcomes. So how can the state alter the natural outcomes of the diversity of life? Something that the Labour Party is very keen about, diversity. So how do you alter things so that all the outcomes are the same? And by outcomes, I'm not quite sure what do they mean. Do they mean all as wealthy as each other, or all have the same incomes, or all are as happy as each other, or live as long as each other? I'm not sure where it's all heading, but I'd be very interested to hear from Mr Cunliffe as to what he means by achieving equality of outcomes in New Zealand. And so the only way you get there historically is by using massive amounts of force. And I'm sure that's not what Labour is proposing, but I'd like to know what they are proposing. And that is the problem that we face here today. And New Zealanders are scratching their heads up and down the country, trying to work out what it is that Labour actually stands for. Talk is cheap. Fine words and sentiments, but there's no basis to them. What are they really saying? What is David Cunliffe really saying? What really is he? Is he a raging left-wing union reformer, or is he a more moderate, business-friendly man? Nobody really knows. And so, if we just run through a few of the contradictions of what they're saying, we hear them talking about power prices going up, being very concerned about power prices going up. Notwithstanding the fact that they went up twice as fast when they were last in power, and yet they champion an ETS on steroids that will inevitably lead to higher power prices. So which one is it? Are they concerned about it, or are they quite happy to increase power prices? Same with housing affordability. They say they're very deeply concerned about housing affordability, particularly in Auckland, yet the single most important thing with housing affordability is interest rates. And this government, by constraining new spending on government to $1 billion a year and being highly disciplined in government spending and fiscal policy, has kept a lid on interest rates, has kept it lower than they would otherwise have been. But when the Labour government were in power, they were splurging around about $3 billion a year in new spending, stoking the fire of inflation and stimulating the economy like nobody's business. And the result was that interest rates were nearly 11%. And so they go on about housing affordability, yet their record was to greatly increase interest rates. So they talk nobly, but their actions achieve the exact opposite. Meantime, the Greens go on about housing affordability, but they support and promote and push for at every opportunity highly restrictive planning policies which artificially increase the value of land, and Labour go along and me too in that area. Same on the question of poverty. We know the best way out of poverty is work, and yet Labour and the Greens oppose every aspect of our welfare policies, which are designed on the principle that everybody can do something and should do something, and the best thing that they could do is get back to work. So that's where we have the contradictions that we have to make our way through in this government. Mr Speaker, we've had a good start to the year in terms of the economy. Things are going very well, but a successful rebalancing will require consistent and positive change over the next few years. The New Zealand economy has continued to expand through 2013, growing at 3.5% a year into September, despite the severe drought that we've had and significantly reduced growth in the first half of 2013. This was amongst one of the higher rates in the developed countries, in the developed worlds. And let's just not forget, when we talk about where are the jobs, which I heard from over the other side, there's been more and more jobs. 66,000 people are more employed now than a year ago, and the unemployment rate at 6%, still too high, but dropping as the economy gathers strength, and in contrast to what's happening in Australia. So the budget in 2014-15, Mr Speaker, will continue. And it's the consistency of the way that the government has been approaching the situation over the past 5 years that has given the confidence that businesses have needed to invest and to create jobs. And it's about the consistency about the 4 priorities that we've had: responsibly managing the finances, getting back to surplus, pushing ahead with a wide range of microeconomic reforms to increase the productivity and competitiveness of the economy, driving better results through better public services, and supporting the rebuilding of Christchurch. People know where they stand with National. They don't know where they stand we've laboured on that basis, Mr Speaker. I affirm this budget policy statement. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, in this budget policy statement, National will say, "We are the party of business." The truth, as we can all see laid bare, is that to National, politics is a business. It's a business where the coinage of the day is their relationships with the rich and the powerful, the interests of the few, which they defend. And it's seen in the big things like Warner Brothers and Sky City and MediaWorks, and it's seen in what might initially have looked like littler things, like a minister's visit to China, where she happened to endorse the products of a company on which her husband is a director and which gave her party a tidy $56,000 donation. But then it gets more complicated because, as usual, it is not the initial pitfall that takes them out. It is the way they deal with it, Mr.